Hey, Years in Life, what's going on? Um, I'm here with my friend Paula. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I'd be happy to. My name is Paula Sachs, and I'm a attachment specialist in private practice in Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts. And I'm one of the co-authors of the book Attachment Disturbances in Adults, Treatment for Comprehensive Repair.
Amazing. So I love this book, and I've been studying this book, and I'm going to keep studying this book. But maybe you could talk to our viewers about what it's really all about. I know attachment is a big buzzword. What does it all mean, Paula?
Well, what it all means, for instance, we all have an attachment. There's only 4 attachment styles, the same as there's only 12 zodiac signs. So if I were to say to you, what is your zodiac sign? And you say to me, Paula, I'm a Cancer. Well, you know what all your characteristics are as a Cancer. Well, it's the same thing with attachment. If you have a secure attachment, then you have certain characteristics, the same as if you have an insecure attachment style of, like, dismissive, or if you're like anxious, preoccupied.
Mhm.
So what attachment is, it's the way you interact with people in the world. And
Okay.
it was created with your family of origin way back.
Hmm.
And that's where it was kind of set.
Hmm.
And so as a therapist, as an attachment specialist, I come in and I assess,
Hmm.
and I find out where some of the difficulties are.
Hmm.
And we use a treatment in our book that is called the 3 pillars. And we do it through hypnosis. And what we actually do is we kind of look at some of the deficits that were created that cause insecure attachment styles and behaviors. And we kind of go in with a positive opposite technique, and we fill it. And
Interesting.
so hopefully it moves you from an insecure attachment style into a more secure attachment style, which actually helps you with your relationships.
So it's a way to repair how you have relationships. So not just a single relationship that you're in, but your whole experience of relationships. And does that include amorous ones with partners, relationships with yourself, with work? Does attachment psychology kind of deal with all of those aspects of relationships?
Yes, as a matter of fact, when I say relationships, what I'm talking about is a dyad between 2 people.
Okay.
Doesn't matter if it's a 5-minute, let's say ordering a Starbucks coffee,
Hmm.
or going to work and meeting somebody like 40 hours a week, or even going more intimate into a interpersonal relationship where you're living with somebody. Because an attachment style are characteristics. For instance, if you have a secure attachment style, which is what we want. And, basically the good news is most of the people do have a secure attachment style. And we're talking about people that really have this kind of autonomy. They have this ease about them. They're forgiving, they're compassionate. They do not hold on to the past. They can actually, they're easy. They're easy to be around. They're balanced.
Hmm.
All right. And then we go into some of the insecure attachment styles. And this is kind of where there was a little bit of a problem very early on in childhood, mostly around, let's say, neglect and rejection, for
Okay.
instance. All right. So if you have a little bit more of a rejecting style that you grew up with your parents or family of origin, you tend to have a little bit like you lack memory. You tend to kind of see yourself as strong and independent and an island. You don't need anybody. And you kind of value this as a positive thing when actually it's kind of a negative thing, especially we all need people. And you tend to do more things than kind of just be, and you dismiss a lot of positive things. And if you have, let's say, the other side that was created out of, let's say, neglect, you tend to be a little bit more worrisome. You tend to, kind of get preoccupied with the past. The past kind of comes into the present a little bit. So if you're fighting with something with a partner right now about something that happened today, right now, and they're all of a sudden like, well, 5 years ago, you said this.
Hmm.
Okay. That's what's called the past invades the present. And it tends to be a little bit more of like, anger, clinginess, just kind of, very difficult to always worrying about someone else's emotional state and not really giving who they really are and what they contribute to a relationship, because it's always so other person focused.
Hmm.
And then the other type that I really don't want to talk about too much right now, because it's a combination of both the insecure attachment styles. So you really do have both of the insecure attachment styles that I'm talking about, which is kind of like a warring strategy where, you know, it's kind of like, I hate you, don't leave me kind of thing.
Right.
And that's what I mean by warring. It's like you're doing the exact opposite and you just kind of bounce around between, you know, I hate you and then please don't leave me, but yet I hate you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easier to focus on, you know, them separate than trying to, you know, deal with the one inside. But it's not hard. And the goal is to actually come in, look at how it was created, and create what we call the ideal parent figures.
Mm-hmm.
And it's where I would assess you and really come in and say, or an attachment specialist therapist would assess and say, this is kind of what you got, and we need to kind of give you the positive opposite.
Amazing.
And what I like about this therapy, because honestly, if you focus on the negative, and let's say you get rid of the negative, there's nothing. There's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So the best thing is to focus on the positive and keep focusing on the positive. And it's like a glass. If you have like milk, half a glass of milk, let's say the milk is the negative, and you just keep pouring in water, and let's say the water is the positive, and you just keep pouring it in and you keep pouring it in, pretty soon the milk leaves and you've got a full glass of positive water.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the treatment.
Okay, amazing. So, because I heard in the past that your attachment style is set. Like once you have it, it's a set, done deal. But this kind of challenges that and suggests that you can do IPF and work with the 3 pillars and actually move from a disorganized, insecure attachment into a secure attachment. That's pretty revolutionary, yes?
It is revolutionary. And the reason why it's so exciting is because it's tangible.
Okay.
Like once I do that, once I introduce somebody to their ideal parent figures and we start really focusing on the positive. And when I say that, it kind of goes like this. It's like, let's imagine a time in the past where you've been very upset about something. Now, don't imagine your parents of origin, but let's imagine that these ideal parents come in and they're able to hold you in the way that you need to be held. And they're there in a way to look at you and notice how they're looking at you with such love.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
And so what you actually get is you actually have a felt sense of this positivity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the felt sense that once you bring a feeling in, it anchors into your system.
Mm-hmm.
And you have enough of these positive feelings that's what you fall back on all the time. So when you see someone, let's say like someone who's a CEO of a company, they're so accomplished. I mean, they've got everything. They've got all the cars and they've got all the houses and they've got everything, but they're empty inside and they're running around looking for something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they know how to do stuff really well.
Mm-hmm.
What's lacking is they never linked it to a positive feel-good state.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you link a positive feel-good state to a sense of accomplishment, you create self-esteem.
Mm-hmm. And
no one tells you how to create self-esteem.
Yeah, right. You just learn it, right?
Well, you do it by when you do something that you feel good about, you link it to a positive feeling and you kind of rejoice in that positive feeling. Okay. And I'll give you an example. And we all know this. If you have children or if you've even walked into an elevator with a child who's about 3 years old and they're like, mommy, I want to push the button. Right.
Right.
And everybody is, you step aside and you let the child push the button and look at the joy and pride in their face of this little sense of accomplishment.
Right.
And if we all rejoice in that moment and celebrate and amplify and magnify that accomplishment, that child feels so good about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But if a parent is too worried about what everybody's going to think in the elevator and she shushes her child or she says, no, let someone else do it, you shut down this opportunity for self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
This is why, especially for parenting, I'm very interested in parenting and I've written 2 books on it that will be published shortly on this aspect of how you create secure attachment in children as a preventative tool, as opposed to coming into my office when you're 20.
Right. Amazing. When are those coming out? I can't wait to read those.
Those are coming out shortly. I'm finishing them up now. Okay. So yeah, it's going to be like a parenting manual and it's on the, sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
I was going to say it's more of like a parenting manual with a story. And I'm talking about how to create what the 5 primary conditions to set up and create self-esteem in children.
Okay, we should do a couple of hours on that because so many people who watch this are interested in parenting, myself included. So the way this works is people come in, they sort of get a score of what kind of attachment they have, and then you use this practice, the 3 pillars and IPF, which is a hypnosis guided meditation strategy, and
Yeah.
help them over time through positive remapping, move into secure functioning. And what kind of results are you guys getting?
I'm sorry?
What kind of results have you been getting so far? How long
Amazing
did it take?
results.
Oh, wow.
We're getting amazing results. And let me just say, the first pillar is the IPF, the imaginary, the imaginary parent figure. The second one is mentalization. We're helping them by doing this with them, is talking through and reflecting, and what is this, how are you experiencing this? Let's stay in the moment, really helping them really kind of develop and identify their mental states, their emotional states, really kind of like reframing them for them, bringing in a positive, reflective piece. Do you think it was this way, or do you think it could possibly be this way?
Okay.
And then the third one is the collaboration, and you do it with somebody. Okay, because you can do meditation alone, as we all know, but it's when you have that socialization, that interaction. But the results we're seeing are amazing. I had one client that was very, one of the most actually anxious, preoccupied styles I'd ever worked with. And he came in and he was like, Paula, people are telling me that I'm acting different and I don't see any difference.
Wow, that's cool.
And I knew right then, it's called the therapeutic marker. And it's external validation. So externally, people were going to him and saying, you're really handling things different. You're really doing this. And it was changing the way he was seeing the world. It was changing the way he was interacting with the world. And, life is perspective. And it all starts in your mind. And the way you think creates your thoughts. And those thoughts create feelings. Okay. And then those feelings kind of create behavior. So if you kind of think in a negative way, you're going to feel negative and you're going to act in a negative way. All right. And so, for instance, if you are going to go to a birthday party and everybody is there and they can't wait to see you and you know about it, you start getting really excited and you start thinking about those people. And then all of a sudden you start getting happy. Then all of a sudden you walk into the party and you've already mentally gotten there because you're so excited. Now imagine somebody who, let's say, had a deficit upbringing in one of the insecure attachment styles. And let's say that, they feel the world doesn't like them. They don't trust the world. And they have to go to a place where they don't really think people like them. So that's already going to set up the mind, which is going to set up the thoughts of, I don't really trust people. People don't like me. Why are they here? What do they want from me? And they walk into that party and they're going to be behaving on those thoughts. And, there's this, so it's very difficult to work with children around the AAI in the sense of, identifying and labeling. The best thing that you can actually do for this is just kind of do more of a generalization. Okay. If you see somebody that has like the characteristics more of a dismissive style, they're the ones that they deactivate their attachment system, which means they don't need you. They're going to blow you off. If you give them anything to read, they're going to refuse just on principle.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's familiar.
Well, you're familiar with that. Okay. So what you want to do is you just want to kind of like, kind of meet them where they are and kind of move them gently. But and then if you have, let's say, another style of teenager that, is like, well, what do you think? Tell me what you think. And then I know what to think based on what you think, because what you think is more important. You want to really kind of help them, really ground them and focus them on who they are and what they think. And you actually want to get the dismissive type to start thinking about other people because they don't. So your best bet is to really kind of generally kind of move them into this kind of range. Does that make sense? And it doesn't have to be so, concrete with analysis and a report. It would just be more identifying what's going on and kind of moving them.
And how do you do that? Like if you're working with younger people, I feel like you can cut off the preoccupied behavior by noticing, hey, I know that you're deferring to me. Let's move your attention back to you. Or do you have specific skills that you work with? And for dismissives, are there specific?
Well, especially for dismissives, they don't really take in other people's perspectives. So you really kind of want to just tune in and say, well, what do you think that person thinks right now? it's kind of helping them develop their own kind of metacognitive, capacity, and also to kind of foster more of a reflective functioning. Like, what do you think your role is when you go into Starbucks and you don't make eye contact with the person you're ordering coffee with, and you just throw money at them as if they're nothing?
Right.
Let's really kind of like, instead of like criticizing, why don't we just kind of bring in alternatives? Like, that's one way to do it. But let's maybe do another way. And let's try this experiment where you actually look at somebody and you smile with your eyes at them and you smile on their face and you say, thank you. And let's just notice if there's any way that, you get a different reaction in people.
Yeah, so sort of anchoring instruments that I've tended to use has been the 0 to 10. Like, where's your organization of mind? Where's your awareness of other? And just try and encourage the teens to get used to noticing. Just start to notice, where are you? What's going on with you? And those seem to work somewhat well in getting them just to be available to the shifts.
Well, and also don't forget where you are developmentally in their stage. Their stage is this is their kind of like launching pad of who they're going to be as adults. And so you really do have this kind of captive audience to kind of bring in these, positive, let's say behaviors that they will either use or reject. It's not up to you to force them to use it. It's the way to bring it in to introduce them. Okay. And that's what we want. I'm always into rewarding really good behavior as opposed to, punishing bad behavior. It's like, it's not really good or bad. And I try and move away from that, especially with young people.
Right.
I try and say it's not good or bad. That's something that we put on it.
Yeah.
But let's try something new. Let's try this approach and let's just see if this works.
Yeah, and working with teens who struggle a lot with cutting, who struggle a lot with substances, who struggle a lot with other sort of process and behavioral things, I try and remove the good bad aspect because they're so used to that, and ask them, well, what do you actually get out of cutting? What does it do for you? And then find out what they're actually looking for in terms of attachment needs. Like, it gives me a sense of safety. It gives me a sense of protection. It's like, so what you really want is protection. You really want safety. And this is the way that you've adapted to allow yourself to get it. And then try and encourage them to see is, well, probably that's not working for you long term. So give them a sense of sort of reauthoring their lives, but not be caught in this binary of you're doing a bad thing and you're a bad kid. And it seems
yeah, I mean, I think that kids, especially when we start getting into those kind of issues, they've already internalized that they're bad.
Right.
There's no, let's say, parental representation inside of them that supports them and loves them no matter what.
Right.
Okay, so they have basically, not gotten the 5 primary needs for secure attachment, which is safety and protection, which is being seen and known, okay, which is soothing and reassurance, which is expressed delight. Has anybody expressed delight in their very being?
Right.
Okay, and also the best self.
Right.
So you come in and you present that, they have no idea what that looks like.
Right.
Okay, and so it's going to be so foreign to them, and they're going to accuse you of a lot of things, and they're going to feel it's manipulative, and because that's how they're surviving. And it's interesting because you see a lot of these, I don't really think there's really anything new. Sometimes it's just how things are brought around.
Right.
But I remember when I was younger, I used to see like WWJD. And I see a lot of what would Jesus do in this moment? And people would wear bracelets around it. And it was a way to remind them that maybe there's someone out there in this world that loves me. Okay. And that's why people do get caught up in like religions, or they get caught up in, they get caught up in something that they try and externalize because there's nothing on the internal.
Right.
If the whole idea, and this is what I love about attachment and I love about IPF, is we're going in and we're starting to put in.
Right.
And we want that, you don't have to wear a bracelet to say, what would my ideal parents do with me right now? Do you know what I mean?
It's worth considering, though.
And it's definitely worth considering. But what was really nice is that they can have the draw upon this, like, I know what that feels like when, when my mom used to just smile at me with love.
Yeah. No, it's incredible. Yeah.
It's incredible. And, and I will say this, and I think this is where people get lost in as a mom, so much is transmitted through your eyes. Eyes. And, you can talk when, you hear people say, did you see the way that person looked at me? My God, they hated me. Or, But does anybody ever say, do you see the way that person looked at me? They really loved me.
That's
Does
so,
anybody ever say that?
yeah.
But yet when we walk into a restaurant and we see newlyweds and they just are smiling and looking at each other, when you, that moment when you were given your child, whether you adopted or you gave birth to a child, and they handed you this little being,
Yeah.
you just couldn't stop smiling.
Yeah, totally.
Well, the kids that you're talking about, they haven't internalized that experience for whatever reason. And sometimes, they've had parents that were absent. You don't get it if they're absent.
Mm-hmm.
They have parents that, maybe were on drugs themselves and they were, zoned out.
Mm-hmm.
They had parents that, what, I don't know why.
Right.
Okay? But, this is what they need.
Well, I love what you say about sort of removing this idea of the bad mother and sort of, when you ask people to approach this, because I think what's challenging is like, look, everyone's trying the best they can, and that's actually what's so heartbreaking. And then you have a world that's set up that encourages parents you have to work all the time, you have to provide. So they're in the practice of providing all these things and missing the opportunity to give potentially the most nourishing, potentially the most important stuff, because we don't reward it in our culture, really.
No, and what we reward in our culture, which is so interesting, we reward work.
Yeah, stuff.
Work.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say in Canada, if you give birth to a baby, you get a year off. In America, you're lucky to get 3 months.
Canada's looking good lately, huh?
It's looking very good.
It out.
But it's those moments. And I actually feel, with so much going on, it's not just, taking care of children, it's taking care of the house, and it's taking care of the cars. It's taking care of everything. And we miss those moments of just sitting and just being.
Mm-hmm.
And if we pay attention a little bit more to how we're being,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to what we're doing, that's a game changer right there.
Yeah, we spoke about this a little bit before, that I think one of the, although it feels disruptive, a potentially really beautiful moment in our history right now is we're noticing how other people are being.
Yes.
We're noticing injustices as they sort of cross platforms that maybe because we were working so hard, we're caught up in our life, we didn't notice.
Right.
And I think ultimately, disruptive as it may be, challenging as it may be, frightening as it may be, is a good thing for the species.
I think so. And I mean, anytime you can take responsibility, and this is another piece, and when we talk about attachment, there's certain types that will not take responsibility. There's a dismissive style or a disorganized style, which is that warring one, will not take responsibility. They're the constant victims.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the anxious preoccupied style that, they'll take responsibility for everything because they don't want to upset anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't help either.
Mm-hmm.
What we want people to really kind of be able to say, I understand and I see what my behavior did, and I will recognize it, and I will, change it. And that's what we're asking for now.
Mm-hmm.
Just notice, accept responsibility, and maybe we want to change it a little bit. Or, but, I think when you, either, disregard it, have distortions around it, or blame people, that doesn't help. And if you are on the anxious preoccupied style and you tend to, oh yeah, it's all me, and you're fine, everything's wrong with me. No, that's not quite yet either. And I think we need to have this kind of dialogue, but it really does come down to society is built of people.
Mm-hmm.
And what attachment does is it helps people with relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And it goes across every kind of social situation. It goes across every kind of gender. It goes across everything, because we are social animals.
Mm-hmm.
The whole idea is to have, a great relationship, where you bring yourself to the table, they bring their self to the table, and you have a very nice, well-informed, kind relationship.
Mutually informed, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, it's like, that's why I love attachment. It's tangible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Me too.